Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Chris Hensing. Meg is away this week. Thanks for joining us. Tonight, businesses are being told that their power will be cut if they don't pay up. But Enwin says the people demanding payment are not the power company. An update on Pelee Island's nursing clinic as plans are announced to have a nurse serving the region once again. And we've got a yarn about a new job for a sheep in the big city as Kay from Ridgetown goes to Toronto. Some small businesses in Windsor have been targeted by scammers, callers demanding money, telling owners that if they don't pay up, the power will be shut off. CBC's TJ Deer has more.
Dion Riom and his wife were in the middle of a rush period a couple of weeks ago when they received a call from a 1866 number. The person on the other end claimed to be from Enwin Utilities, saying Riom had to e-transfer $363 in unpaid fees within 45 minutes or their hydro would be shut off. In a state of panic, he paid.
I'm not very naive, but they got me on that one because I was nervous they're going to shut my power off, and we just started.
But at the same time, his wife called Enwin to verify if the call was legitimate. Less than a minute after he paid, the Rioms found out they were scammed.
I called the police, and they just said I had to file the report online. And I said to them, well, I have a 1866 number, and I have the e-transfer and address, and I'm like, why can't they do anything faster?
Riom contacted his bank. They sent this letter saying the business was liable for the transaction, and if you continue to persist in these activities, which we view as a risk to both you and CIBC, we will need to consider additional steps, including terminating our relationship with you. The bank told CBC News that it's looking into the matter. Others in the city were targeted, including this hair salon across the street. While Riom was caught at the wrong time, the staff here caught on.
It just doesn't sound right at all. Someone who is trying to tell you that you're in arrears doesn't sound like a drill sergeant. So that basically, put my senses up.
Enwin says they don't employ what they call high-pressure tactics, such as immediately demanding money.
We do our best to try to send out communications to warn our customers, mainly via social media, that the scammers are out there in force, and obviously they're not representing our organization.
We called the phone number both Riom and Bonato received the calls from.
Thank you for calling SMUD, your community-owned, not-for-profit electric service.
Eventually, we reached someone who said his name was Roger, but he hung up. The same thing happened when we called again and spoke with a woman who said her name was Roberta. Riom says if anyone receives a similar call,
Step back and take a minute to think about it, or you hang up the phone and you try and figure things out before you do anything drastically.
Gleason also says to contact Enwin to verify if what the scammers are saying is true. TJ Deer, CBC News, Windsor.
Some good advice there. Windsor Regional Hospital says it is making recovery progress following that ransomware attack. In a news release today, it says that it's been able to resume some radiation treatments, but until things are back to normal, cancer patients and new referrals will continue to be transferred outside of the region for care. They have not said how long that will last. The hospital is reminding patients that need to travel for care that there is financial support available. At a press conference for another event today, the board chair for Windsor Regional Hospital says recent weeks have been difficult. She said staff are working hard to make sure patients are the priority. And some people have told CBC News that they are disappointed with the hospital's lack of communication during this incident. CBC's Jennifer Lagrassa putting that question and others to the board chair.
I really think that you should ask that question to Dave Mouget, and I believe that they're doing the best they can from a communication perspective with keeping the focus on their patients. So I would suggest that you reach out to David Mouget and ask him that.
We are hearing, I guess, a lot of patient impact from this, people not getting scans or biopsies, things that they had to get done, they've been delayed. What is your message, I guess, to people in the community that are really struggling with what's going on right now?
I think everyone's struggling, including the staff are struggling. Again, everyone I think is doing the best they can. The biggest focus is making sure that we could concentrate on patient care. That's the focus, that's the concentration, and I think the hospital is doing a really good job of that.
In response to a request for an interview with hospital CEO David Mouget and concern over lack of communication from the hospital, a spokesperson said they are speaking with patients directly and sending news releases with the most up-to-date information when possible. Starting tomorrow, Pelee Island residents will have its own nurse after being without one since early September. Erie Shore's Healthcare will now operate the remote nursing station.
I'm very relieved, very relieved. There's a scarcity issue for a lot of resources on Pelee Island, and it's highlighted in the winter months. Healthcare, is an essential.
A new mobile medical clinic will be on the island until the middle of next month. That's that bus there. That's because the bus, it actually can't make the trip after the ferry stops running for the winter. So starting next week, the nursing station will be staffed by a dedicated nurse who's from the island. They're going to be there 3 days a week. Now, for the past several years, Vaughan Canada operated the Pelee Island nursing station. They said that they were having a hard time filling the vacancy. Car theft is a growing problem in Canada. We've certainly been hearing about it here in Windsor. New insurance industry figures show that about 200 cars a day get stolen in this country. Late model Honda CRVs, Lexus SUVs, and Ford pickup trucks are the most common targets, but it's a different story in the UK where one of the most stolen cars isn't even being built anymore. Last year, the Ford Fiesta became the most stolen car in Britain. The compact has been around for 50 years and is one of the best-selling cars in the UK. More than 22 million were built worldwide, but the company has stopped making them. The last one rolling off the assembly line back in July. Police and industry experts say thieves are stealing the cars, stripping them of their parts, and then selling them on the second-hand market. Well, if you're on the hunt for a job, you've likely seen an ad for a gig that doesn't have the salary attached. Ontario is planning to become one of the very few places in North America to require those figures on those job postings. They say it's a way to cut down on the gender pay gap, but not everyone is convinced that that change is going to help. Larenda Redekop has the story.
Provincial numbers show women on average earn 87 cents for every dollar a man makes. The Minister of Labour is proposing a change he says can fix that.
Including salary ranges with job postings can help close the gender pay gap while allowing companies to find qualified candidates faster and improve retention.
The province of British Columbia recently made the same change for all job ads as of November 1st.
Transparency is good, but it's not going to solve problems.
Law professor Valerio De Stefano would like to see full disclosure of what people are actually paid.
If a company has a great candidate and they want to offer more than the salary range that they initially published, they are still going to do that, and there's nothing you can do about it. And if those decisions are affected by gender, for instance, this is not going to solve the gender wage gap.
He says the pay gap among women and men doing the same job is only one part of the problem. The jobs traditionally done by women are less valued. He says a hospital nurse, for example, is often paid less than an accountant. The government also plans to require companies to disclose when they're using AI, artificial intelligence, in their hiring process.
This will make Ontario one of the first jurisdictions, along with a handful of others in North America, to do this.
A few years ago, an AI program used by Amazon was unintentionally biased against women. Once again, De Stefano says more than just disclosing the use of the program is needed.
This is Amazon, so it's a giant tech company. Imagine a round-on-the-mill employer that just buy or leases this software without understanding anything on how they work. The risk these employers are sitting on are enormous.
The government says it will introduce legislation soon on these proposed changes. The opposition would like to see more done to address gender wage gaps. And it wants to see enforcement, reporting, and tracking to ensure greater pay equity. Larenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Today, the first Canadians stuck inside Gaza have been able to leave. Once they make the crossing, they'll be bused 400 kilometers to Cairo. Then they'll have just days to get home or make other arrangements. CBC's Tom Perry has the latest.
There were 80 Canadian names on the list published by the Palestinian Border Authority today. That's 80 Canadians who were given permission to cross from Gaza through the Rafah crossing into Egypt. Now, there were no Canadians on any of the lists published last week by the Border Authority. That did lead to questions as to why Canada had none of its citizens coming over when other countries were getting their citizens out of Gaza. The government says that it had been hoping to have more Canadians. Canada's ambassador to Egypt said initially, before the border shut down unexpectedly over the weekend, the plan was for 2 groups of Canadians to come through, one of over 200. So instead of having more than 400 Canadians coming through, today we saw just 80 Canadian names on that list. Now, CBC News did have a freelance camera operator on the Gaza side of the Rafah crossing. He spoke to some of the Canadians making that journey, and here's some of what they had to say.
I was able to get my 2 daughters and my wife names on the Canadian list after a lot of trials. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to get my parents' names and my sister's names on the list as well. So I left them in Gaza in such a horrible situation. So I call upon all the Canadians related to the government or the foreign ministry to work on getting the first family out of Gaza as well, because I was in such a difficult situation to choose between leaving with my own family, small family, and leave my parents behind.
And for those Canadians, getting through the border crossing is just one leg of their journey. They're going to be met up with buses from the Canadian Embassy. They'll be brought here to Cairo. They'll have 3 days to get their papers in order, and after that, they've got to move on either to Canada or elsewhere, but that does still leave hundreds of other Canadians still in Gaza who are trying to get out, trying to get to safety. Tom Perry, CBC News, Cairo.
Back here in Windsor, Essex, people in Lakeshore are noticing that it's a popular spot for people leaving the GTA. The municipality is seeing a rise in population, saying that there's a growing South Asian community that's active in the area. You've probably noticed the Lakeshore Punjabi Bazaar. The owner has a farm in Wheatley, but said Lakeshore was the right place to open his business. It's a spot that's also growing. He's adding a dine-in restaurant to the grocery store.
A lot of people from moving from Brampton, Toronto, and went from Edmonton to this side, Valley River. It's really nice over here.
What do you think it is about Lakeshore in particular? Because that's seeing more South Asians.
Because I've been to a couple of more places. The Lakeshore people are really down to earth. That's why people wants to go where they feel safe, and that's why from big cities you don't feel safe. Like people are banging horn and all that crowded. It's like peaceful and quiet. That's why.
Peaceful and quiet. We've got more on the growing South Asian population on our website. It's at cbc.ca/Windsor. Have you heard about the local sheep making moves in the big city? I ruined the joke. Some say it's unbelievable. A sheep from Ridgetown is the ambassador of this year's Royal Agricultural Winter Fair. Kay the sheep took a trip on the GO train to get there.
This is pretty special. I'm not gonna lie, she definitely was made for the camera and for all eyes to be on her. We came in on the GO this morning and she was an absolute seasoned veteran on the train. We couldn't have asked for her to do any better, having never gone on anything other than a truck and trailer before. So she's definitely one in a million.
Every year we have an animal ambassador because that's what the fair is all about. It's important to celebrate all of the animals that are part of Canadian agriculture, because getting to the Royal by the GO train is an excellent way to travel. Why not make sure that the animals do the same? So every year we do this.
How was your GO train ride today? And how do you feel being ambassador for the Royal Winter Fair? Are people going to flock to the Royal to see you?
This is her. What you see is what you get, I guess. We'll see what other kind of trouble we get into between now and the end of the fair.
These Rose City Rewinds help us highlight how things were back in the day and what we're seeing change. This piece takes us to 1987, a profile of 2 young men taking on new jobs and breaking gender barriers.
Tony Marcelletta is a family man, proud father of 2. He's a big man, 6 feet 5, 230 pounds, and he's a pretty good football player. But that's not how he earns his living. Tony Marcelletta is a nurse. Tony was one of the graduates last month when Windsor's St. Clair College held its fall convocation. The graduating class included 71 nurses. Tony was one of only 2 men in the group. It's still very much a woman's occupation. Out of 75,000 nurses in Ontario, only 1,200 are men. But even that ratio represents a dramatic increase.
With the stigma that I had behind males going into nursing, I was kind of thinking of it a lot, but then, I said I want to do what I want to do kind of thing.
I just got your 11 o'clock medication there.
About 8 years ago, Larry Strom made the same decision. Today, he's assistant head nurse in the intensive care unit at Windsor's Hotel Dieu Hospital. What's it like to be a man in a role so strongly associated with women?
I guess I really don't think it matters when the patient is sick who is administering the care, as long as the care rendered is competent and, the caregiver is very comfortable.
Despite the increase in their numbers, men still represent only a tiny fraction of all Canadian nurses. But if the current trend continues, the time may come when the word nurse no longer automatically conjures up the image of a woman.
Let's take a live look outside there. We got a crisp night. We've got the glow of Caesars. We've got ourselves a nice little reminder of how that clock has changed and the nighttime comes a little earlier. Colette Kennedy with a look at the forecast coming up next. Colette Kennedy joins us for a live look at the forecast. You were warning us yesterday about a system that was headed our way. Are we missing it? Are we stuck in it? What do we got going on here, pal?
Well, I will tell you, Chris, it's not missing us, but kind of the worst of it will be missing the Windsor area. So. Okay. I know it's getting dark earlier, and then you have a gray day with rain, and that can really bring you down. But all you have to do is think, well, not that far away, they're dealing not with rain, but freezing rain and ice pellets and some wet snow mixed in there, and that will be the case tomorrow. It is good to take note of, though, for any of our viewers who might have some traveling to do. So the freezing rain warnings, you can see those near the Bruce Peninsula, but through cottage country around Georgian Bay and in the lee of Lake Huron there. But outside of that is still a special weather statement from Environment Canada for areas where there can be some tricky conditions and slippery conditions on the roadways as well. But as the system moves in, I think even towards Sarnia, you may see a little bit of this mixed precipitation in that region, and maybe just a few moments of some wet snow kind of coming in, or a few ice pellets through Windsor before it quickly changes to rain because of the temperature. Daytime highs, just interesting of note, because these were all from basically the overnight hours, and then the temperatures were coming down or stabilizing through the day. Our current reading is at 9 degrees, Sarnia there at 6, and then the cooler air to the north. And so we're in between systems. It gives us a break, and we have some quieter conditions through the overnight, but then the next one is on the first one's heels. And as that comes in, we're going to be seeing the clouds really thickening up through the overnight hours. Could just have a peek at sun to start the day tomorrow before it all fills in. And then as it does, developing mostly as rain. This is what I mean with a little bit of that warmer air overriding cooler air at the surface. It could have a mix, but it should be brief. Could be a little bit longer into Sarnia, but then this is the warm sector. Those temperatures will pick up. Winds kind of shifting towards the east, and then it does turn to rain. A little bit of a different story, though, in those areas I was showing you where the warnings, or at least those statements, are in place, because that could be prolonged for a few hours, and it's really going to be tomorrow afternoon into the evening, and then it just keeps tracking eastward, and this all changes to rain. At times, there are pockets where it will be some heavier downpours, and then that moves through into Thursday morning. We begin to get improvement. We do have the cold front that has to go through. There's still going to be some clouds along that, but once we can push that through, we should begin to see some clearing and improvement into Thursday afternoon. So another kind of up and down we go. Lesser rainfall amounts further south here, and then the juicier section is going to be right along that front through other parts of Ontario. So how do you prepare for this? Could start to see a few showers in the morning when you're off to school, but when you're picking the kids up or they're heading home, that's when they have the much better chance that we'll have more widespread rain that's developed. So keep that in mind, some breezy conditions too, and then know that, Chris, after that, we get to take a breather for a few days.
Not bad, not bad. It's good to see on Saturday. Looks like things will be clear too for the services.
Yes, exactly. It is looking good there.
All right, thanks for this, Colette.
You're welcome.
Now, coming up after the break, a battle brewing between premiers in Ottawa over billions of dollars going to towns and cities for housing. That's next. Some of Canada's premiers want to stop Ottawa from cutting funding deals directly with municipalities. They're threatening to bring in legislation. This comes as the federal government is giving out billions to cities and towns to encourage the construction of new, affordable homes. CBC's Marina Van Stockelberg reports.
Canada's premiers say any federal money to build housing should go through them first. They're threatening to pass laws to prevent Ottawa from funding cities directly.
There's a shared concern that there is a federal government that is increasingly looking at the potential political benefits, for lack of a better term, of circumventing the provinces and landing in a Toronto or Vancouver and dropping a housing program strictly for political gain.
It comes as Ottawa has begun cutting deals with cities to build more homes fast. Up for grabs, $4 billion.
And if you're coming into a province with projects, then we'll ask, I guess, to be involved. But if that's not working, then we'll legislate that we need to be involved.
The premiers want what Quebec has. A law there says money from Ottawa for municipalities must flow through the provincial government first. Canada's housing minister says this is the first time he's heard the premier's concerns.
I see no reasonable excuse to stop working directly with municipalities if we're actually achieving progress with the strategy that we've adopted.
The federal money is contingent on cities changing their zoning bylaws to allow for denser housing that can be approved more quickly.
The sooner that we can get the funds from the federal government in a manner that's easy and quick is what I'm looking for.
Halifax's mayor says Nova Scotia's government has slowed down federal funding for transit before. He doesn't want to see that happen with housing.
The province didn't match the money, and it took them 8 months or so just to pass through the money from the federal government. So does it slow things down if you go through the province? Of course it does.
Again, just as we're starting to get momentum, just as the housing accelerator was starting to show progress, we now have provinces trying to block it, and I think that's unfortunate.
Hundreds of applications for the federal money have been submitted. 7 deals have been reached. The housing minister says he won't let anything slow him down from building desperately needed housing fast. Marina Van Stockelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
If you're into vintage clothing, a hat that hasn't seen the head of its owner for over 200 years is expected to fetch close to $1 million at auction in France. This hat, worn by Napoleon, self-proclaimed Emperor of France, will go on sale later this month in Paris. It's a black beaver felt hat in a traditional military style or a 2-cornered shape, and it became a trademark of the soldier emperor, Napoleon wearing it parallel to his shoulders, unlike most officers in the day, and that was to distinguish himself from others when he was on the battlefield. It was worn by him during his reign at the helm of the French Empire in the early 1800s. And European astronomers have released the first images from the Euclid Space Telescope. It was launched in July from Florida on a 6-year groundbreaking mission to hunt for 2 of the most mysterious components in the universe. The European Space Agency, in partnership with NASA, says that these magnificent photos of the Perseus cluster are the sharpest of their kind. Euclid's objective is to gather a better understanding of dark matter and dark energy. They're the hidden forces believed to make up 95% of the universe, but little is known about it. Euclid's wide field of view can capture images and record data from an area more than 100 times bigger than the Webb telescope. It's designed to monitor millions of galaxies up to 10 billion light years away. And that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. Thank you so much for watching us tonight. We will see you back here tomorrow.